Welcome to the Fantasy Football Endgame with your hosts, Pierre Camus and Chris Moncano.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Endgame. I'm Pierre. With me is Chris, and we're here to talk quarterbacks for Week 4. And let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that would be the fact that Big Ben and Ryan Tannehill not going to be options this week. You know that game is canceled now, officially canceled. Chris, you just did a reaction video on that. Quick thoughts on the quarterback situation. Of course, they should just go back and watch that for all your thoughts. But does this make a big difference in the quarterback scene for Week 4?
I don't know. Not in a single QB league. In two QB leagues and Superflex, certainly. But in a single QB league, it's so deep. There's so many options. And there's a lot of options I really like this week. You should be able to find guys on your waiver wire that you can feel fairly comfortable about starting in place of these guys.
Yeah. And, late round QBs been more and more popular, as the years go on. It's just easier to replace a quarterback. Obviously, if you're not getting one of those top couple of guys, it's not a big gap. And, some of those quarterbacks have been disappointing. Guys you thought, it'd be kind of a, safe mid-late round quarterback like Carson Wentz. Yeah, not so much. But we'll talk about some of those possible streaming options. But first, I got to ask you about Cam Newton because he's looking like a potential – I want to say he was almost like a league winner the first 2 weeks, right? Because he's running the ball, he's putting up mad numbers, and thought this is a guy that nobody thought could be, necessarily a starting every week fantasy quarterback. Well, a few people maybe did. And then all of a sudden, he's looking like vintage Cam. Not so much last week, though. So the question here is, he's got to match up with Kansas City. You would think, okay, there's going to be a high over, and, he's going to put up points. He's going to have to throw the ball, let it loose. Given the fact that he's looked pretty good, maybe this is a bounce back week. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I feel pretty good about Cam. I feel like he's in that every week kind of start discussion. I don't view him. I know those first two games were crazy, but he was getting like goal line carries. He had 2 touchdowns in each of the first 2 games, ran for 75 yards week 1, 47 yards week 2. Last week didn't really need to do a lot, wasn't really asked to do a lot. And that running game with Sonny Michel and Rex Burkhead was just running wild all over the Raiders, right? The Raiders could not stop him. So he didn't really need to do a lot. That's not going to be the case this week. He's going to need to do a lot against that KC defense. Now, that defense looked pretty good against Lamar Jackson, and they definitely look better this year than they did last year. So it's going to be a tough test, but I still think you can slot him in as a low-end QB1, like in that 10 to 12 kind of range for me.
Yeah, Cam's always been a guy who's kind of polarizing. People kind of love or hate for whatever reason. And, in fantasy, it's no different because, some people thought he was going to be a, great bounce back candidate all over him. And some people didn't even look at him twice. So after the first 2 weeks, there were some victory laps being taken. And then, last week happened. So here's the thing, it's never that simple, right? It's not just, it's going to either boom or bust. He was doing really well those first 2 weeks, but a lot of that was because they were letting him run, especially near the goal line, like you said. I'm a little worried, and I don't know if this was by design. I don't know if Belichick was like, hey, let's throw him out there and just show everybody that he's still good, that he could be vintage Cam, even if he's not vintage Cam. But his rushing, not just yardage, but his attempts are going down every week. So week 1, carried it 15 times, right? 75 yards and those 2 touchdowns. Week 2, 11 times, 47 yards, but still had 2 touchdowns. And then last week, he only carried it 9 times for 27 yards, didn't get in the end zone. Now, like you said, that this Kansas City defense, better than people give it credit for, right? It's not just the offense that helped them win the Super Bowl. And if they can shut down Lamar Jackson, I don't know how great I feel about Cam. I think he's going to have to throw the ball a lot. He might put up some yardage, but that his main value is because of what he brings with the legs. So to me, it's a little shaky at this point. I could start him, but I don't feel great. Like, I don't feel completely confident that he's necessarily going to be a top 12 fantasy quarterback. So if I have a different option, depending on, of course, what that is, I might go to that. What about Drew Brees? Let's go with the anti-Cam Newton. Drew Brees, not going to do much with his legs, doesn't have the arm strength anymore. We know this. but he's still getting by, right? Last week, 288 yards, 3 touchdowns. This is without Michael Thomas, right? So he's still finding a way to get it done. But can he keep surviving this way by just basically dumping the ball off to Alvin Kamara like 20 times a game?
It was so frustrating watching that game Monday night because we talked about it on last week's start sit. We talked about Drew Brees, and I said, if you're starting Drew Brees, you got to just be banking on dump offs to Alvin Kamara that Alvin Kamara, takes to the house. And so what does Alvin Kamara do Monday night? He takes the ball and just runs wild, breaking tackles, going to the house, and makes Drew Brees look like a superstar while Drew Brees is just, basically throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage. So I feel like if you started Drew Brees last week, you could take a big sigh of relief, like, okay, that worked out. But I can't feel great starting him. I can't because, again, you're banking on Alvin Kamara running wild after the catch. I know there was one point last week when Drew Brees had 250 passing yards, and at that time, 130 of those yards came from Alvin Kamara after the catch. Not even the yards he threw to Alvin Kamara, just the yards that Alvin Kamara picked up after he caught the ball. So are you going to continually just hope that Alvin Kamara runs for 130 yards after the catch? Because I'm telling you right now, for as good as Alvin Kamara is, he's not going to do that every game because that would break the yards after catch record by like a zillion yards, right? He would annihilate the yards after catch. I mean, even having 130 yards in a game is not going to happen every week. So, there's some talk that Michael Thomas may play this week. I don't know. I haven't really seen anything, but if he doesn't, no, I can't start Drew Brees. Once again, I'm out. I'm not rolling Drew Brees out and banking on Alvin Kamara carrying me to, a 20-point fantasy game.
Yeah, and we were both kind of out on Brees preseason because we know the arm strength isn't there anymore. This isn't the Saints offense you remember from the last few years. Those games, that stat line, he'll put up decent yardage here and there, but I just don't see it happening. Michael Thomas is probably not going to play. They're going to keep it, play it safe because there's no reason to rush him back, especially against Detroit. So, and I looked it up because I was curious. I was like, we know that that's all he's doing. And sure enough, talk about average depth of target for quarterbacks. If you take out Jacoby Brissett, who threw 4 passes, if you talk about starting quarterbacks, sure enough, dead last, 5.1, I think, average depth of target. So, you can only go so far with that. That's all I'm saying. So I'm out on Brees, true. I don't think they're going to have to throw the ball that much this week anyways. All right, now I am in on one of these guys, maybe both. So Cincinnati, Jacksonville, probably not the game you want to sit and watch, all Sunday, but it is a game that could have some fantasy points scored because both defenses are pretty bad. So let's start with Burrow. Back-to-back games with 300 yards. Now he gets to face Jacksonville's defense, which is going to be as generous as we expected, I think, all season long. How big are you on Burrow this week?
I love Burrow this week. I think you can lock him in with confidence. If he's on your waiver wire and maybe Big Ben was your starter, or you've been rolling out guys like Carson Wentz who have really underperformed, go with Joe Burrow. It's obvious the Bengals' offensive game plan is to throw and throw off him. 36 attempts week 1, and that was a low-scoring 16-13 game. 61 attempts week 2 in that Thursday night game at Cleveland. Now they were kind of behind in that one coming back. But even last week, in a game they were leading most of the way through against Eagles in that ridiculous tie, he still had 44 attempts, right? He's got 5 touchdowns, only 1 interception on the year. He looks great. Tyler Boyd's emerging. I expect A.J. Green to be better. He's starting to use T. Higgins now. So I love Burrow this week. I think he's a top 10 option for you this week at quarterback.
Yeah, and looking at it, especially after readjusting everything, I think he snuck into my top 10 for quarterbacks this week. So, yeah, if you got him, I would definitely play him. And, I think if you took a chance on him as your backup quarterback or picked him up after week 1, you got to be pretty happy, Burrow owners. Not so happy Joe Mixon owners, but that's a different story. But what about the other side here? We got Gardner Minshew after the first 2 weeks looking like, hey, maybe he's a guy we can just keep in there, right, every week because they're going to have to throw the ball, and he's been really effective. And then Thursday night happened. You ran into the buzzsaw that is the Dolphins defense. But anyway, so 3 touchdowns, no touchdowns. without DJ Chark. Now, DJ Chark is coming back, but does that mean that Minshew all of a sudden is back to being fantasy relevant?
I think he's okay. The problem for me with this game is I think it's going to be a James Robinson game. That Bengals rush defense is terrible. Teams are just running wild on them. And if the Jags are smart, that's what they'll do. So this isn't going to be one of those games where Minshew, they're down 2 scores in the fourth quarter and he start throwing the ball all over the place and chucking touchdowns. So I kind of feel like this is going to be like a 250-yard, 1, maybe 2 touchdown game for Minshew, which isn't terrible, but that's not really like the huge ceiling that we're looking for in a streaming quarterback or a depth quarterback. So, I mean, he's okay. Like he's okay as your QB2 in a super flex or 2 QB leagues, but in a 1 QB league, I think you have better options on the wire or on your bench than Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people are going to kind of just remember those first couple of games and, it's going to come back. But did we ever expect that he's going to be throwing, like 3 touchdowns, 300 yards per game? No, we never expected that. So I think that's going to wind up being more of the outlier. I think he's going to be kind of what he was at the end of last year, which is good, but not great. So I definitely prefer the other quarterbacks we've talked about even this week because, like you said, it's also about the matchups. The Bengals, you don't think about defense when you think about the Bengals, but it's really their run defense. And if you can run on them, you don't have to pass. Okay, so their pass defense, they've only allowed 3 passing touchdowns so far in 3 games, right, total. So this isn't necessarily a game where he could feast anyways. So I'm out on Minshew this week. All right, who else are you out on? Let's go with our busts first, just to mix things up. Who is your bust at quarterback for week 4?
Well, as a fan of the Washington football team, this one pleases me, and it's Daniel Jones, against the Rams. Talked about it a little bit when we talked about the tight ends, Evan Ingram. Man, he's really I don't even know if I can say he's regressed this year. Maybe he just played above his level last year, or maybe he's just off to a slow start. But so far, he's looked like the guy that everybody was like, what are the Giants doing when they drafted him in the first round? 6 turnovers, only 2 touchdowns, and those both came in the first game. He's yet to top even 280 yards on the season. He looks lost out there. I don't know. I can't start Daniel Jones. And this is not a great matchup either, right? Rams have a pretty good secondary, pretty good against quarterbacks. So, no, I can't. If you drafted Daniel Jones, like as a late-round QB with upside or as a bench QB with upside, no chance. He's on my bench or on the waiver wire. He's not in my lineup. Yeah,
you can't trust him for sure. This defense, no joke. They got Jalen Ramsey is okay. Darius Williams has been playing pretty good. Aaron Donald's going to probably eat him alive by halftime. So, yeah, no Jones for me either. I would say that I'd like to have a trendier pick here, but you know what? It didn't work last week, so I'm going to go back to it because eventually it's got to hit, right? That's how it works. I think that's the gambler's mentality. It's going to come at some point. So I was out on Tom Brady because I thought the game script would work against him because they wouldn't have to pass the ball against Denver, and then he threw 3 touchdowns. But no Godwin. Scotty Miller, right, the scooter, is banged up too. Fournette might be out. And this defense of the Chargers is no joke. I know they're banged up too, but still, I feel like all is going to conspire to finally a letdown game from Brady. Because really, think about it, before the first 2 weeks, he didn't put up very good fantasy numbers anyways. So I'm not putting it in my lineup. That would be if I had him on any of my teams. But yeah, no Brady for me this week. Who do you have booming this week at quarterback?
Well, if you've listened to our wide receiver start sit, and if you haven't yet, you should go do that now. We both liked the Dolphins wide receivers, so you got to like their quarterback, Ryan Fitzpatrick, against the Seahawks. All the Seahawks are doing is allowing over 400 yards and 2 touchdowns to quarterbacks per game. That's it, just that little bit. And I think people look at this and probably think, oh, Seattle's just going to blow them out. But I don't think that's going to be the case. Fitzmagic, this is like a Fitzmagic game right here. This is his kind of game. Just go out there, right, go toe-to-toe with Russell Wilson, sling the ball all over the field, interceptions be damned. So I'm expecting a huge monster game from Ryan Fitzpatrick this week. I think he has top 5 upside, and he's probably still sitting there on your waiver wire. So if you're desperate and you want plenty of upside, go get Ryan Fitzpatrick.
I mean, goes without saying, I'm a fan of Fitzpatrick, but top five, man, that's pretty bold. So let's go with it, right? You got Fitzpatrick, you put him all over all those other guys. Um, I'm going to go a little deeper here. Hopefully, a guy you don't have to start in a single quarterback league, but maybe the only time I'll recommend Kirk Cousins, not just because, Justin Jefferson broke out and all of a sudden it's going to be this great, wonderful offense. But, I still think that this team is going to turn around. Don't underestimate a hungry team. You have a team that starts out 0-3. They're going to bring out their best, right? Especially a team that was expected to make the playoffs. Now, I'm not saying they're going to win, but I don't really care, right? For fantasy purposes, they're going to do what it takes. They're going to play Houston's defense, which is a shell of what it used to be. I think this game could be high scoring because Minnesota's defense is terrible. So I feel pretty good about Cousins, kind of as I'd say high-end QB2 in a super flex or two quarterback league. Definitely roll him out. You're in a desperate spot and you have to stream quarterbacks. Let's say Burrow's gone. I would take Cousins over Minshew, and of course over Brady. So I feel like he'll be good enough this week. How about that? Is that a good enough endorsement?
Yes.
All right. So endorse us by giving us a thumbs up. If you like what you see, hit that subscribe button and, of course, the bell. We're here each and every week to help you win, dominate, crush your opposition, and have a good time doing it. So check out our other episodes. We got running back, wide receiver, and tight end for start sit. We're going to be live, of course, on game day Sunday morning with last-minute updates. Plenty of injuries to keep you updated on, and hopefully no more. But that's it. Thanks for watching.